recognize that it's not so easy sometimes for people to relate. We spend the whole day on Chorban Beis HaMikdash, that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. It's not so easy to relate to the notion that something that happened a few thousand years ago. But maybe there's another way that we can connect to it and appreciate what the profundity of the day is. There's one of the piyutim that we sing on Shabbos. Rabbi Chaimov was just talking about love. We sing the following thing. I'm not going to sing it. Ohavi Hashem, people are loving Hashem. Hamachakim bebinyan Ariel, who are anticipating and hoping for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. So Sisu v'simchu b'yom Shabbos Kodesh, have an extra rejoicing on Shabbos, on the Holy Shabbos. K'makablim matan nachliel. Again, Ohavi Hashem, people are loving Hashem. Hamachakim bebinyan Ariel, who are hoping and longing, anticipating the Beis HaMikdash. Sisu v'simchu b'yom Shabbos Kodesh, have an extra desire, an extra pleasure, an extra delight on Shabbos Kodesh. K'makablim matan nachliel. Question is, what's the connection between Ohavi Hashem, people loving Hashem? We can understand maybe that they're anticipating the building of the Beis HaMikdash, and that they should have a sisu v'simchu b'yom Shabbos Kodesh. What's the connection between the pleasure and the enjoyment that we have on Shabbos? So there's an old-time story about, again, when my kids ask me when I tell them a story, it's a true story. I have to admit over here, it's not a true story. It's not even a medrash, but it's more like a fable. But it has inside, embedded in it, a very, very powerful, true message. And the story goes like this, that there was a fellow got washed up on an island after a shipwreck. And when he found himself on this island all by himself, so he had to take care of his initial personal needs. He had to learn how to build a shelter and clothing and food. And he set himself up. He was providing for those things. Everything was okay. But now he began to long for human company. When will I have a chance to be with other people again? Am I going to be alone on this island for the rest of my life? So he began to explore the island. And it was difficult. He had to go out of his comfort zone. But he found, on the other side of the island, lo and behold, that there was a civilization over there. There was buildings, and there was houses. He said, he can't wait. He went running into the first store to see if he can find some people over there. And he opened up the door of the store. You could tell things had been used recently. There wasn't cobwebs. It was fresh. It was clean. And he came running in and he said, hello, hello, hello. But all he heard was the echo of his own voice. Hello, hello, hello. But all he heard was the echo of his own voice. He went to another store. He couldn't find anybody. And he walked around. He peeked inside. He opened up the shutters of a house. And he also shouted in, hello, hello. But he didn't meet any people. All he heard was the echo of his own voice. So after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, he's marching around thinking, is there something wrong with me? Am I going out of my mind? So after 6 days, he puts his head down, and in one lapse moment, suddenly he feels a hand on his shoulder. And he looks up, and he sees that the streets are teeming with people. And he goes, where's everybody coming from? And the fellow says, would you like to come to my house for Shabbos? He says, yeah, sure. He says, where's everybody been? Where are you all coming from? And they said, we're busy getting ready for Shabbos. We haven't got time to talk now. Okay, fine. Everybody he asked, they had the same answer. After a while now, he just decided, okay, I'm going to get into the Shabbos. So he got himself dressed and ready and groomed for Shabbos. And he's sitting there in shul, now that Shabbos is starting, L'chad Dodi, he leans over to the fellow next to him and he says, where was everybody during the weekday? And they said, we don't talk about what we do on Shabbos, on the weekday on Shabbos. So he tried the fellow next to him on the other side. He says, where were you during the weekday? He says, we don't talk about what we do on the weekday on Shabbos. He tried the fellow in front of him, the fellow in back of him. They don't talk about the weekday on Shabbos. Okay, I might as well just sit back and enjoy the Shabbos. The singing was so angelic. It was so beautiful. It was so amazing. It was so uplifting. He'd never had a Shabbos like this before. He came to the house. The children were so well behaved. You can imagine. And that the Divrei Torah was so lucid. It was so clear. And the food was delicious beyond anybody's imagination. Wow. And at the end of Shabbos, so he's figuring, okay, after Shabbos, I'll have a chance to ask my question where everybody went. I'll satisfy my curiosity. After the wonderful, delightful Shabbos, the Havdalah candle goes into the wine, and suddenly, he strikes a match to say, okay, now, where was everybody during hello, hello? Everybody's left. The room is empty. The candle was flickering in front of the rabbi's face a moment ago. Now suddenly the room is empty. Where did everybody go? He's sitting there wondering, did I imagine that? Did I feel it? Did I taste it? I can still taste the food. I can still have heartburn, right? I still have a memory of the Divrei Torah. The songs are swimming in my mind. He said, and the pictures of the children, the images of the children are still in front of my face. He said, but where did everybody go? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days pass by. And suddenly, in one lapse moment, suddenly a hand is on his shoulder, the streets are teeming with people, and he goes, where'd you guys come from? Where's everybody been all week? And they said, would you like to come to our house for Shabbos? He says, yes, but where's everybody been? Oh, we're too busy getting ready for Shabbos. Okay, I heard that story before. Comes into shul. Now he's sitting in shul and he says, where was everybody during the week? Where'd everybody go? He said, we don't talk about the weekday on Shabbos. Okay, fine. He goes through the whole Shabbos. The rabbi standing in with a Havdalah candle flickering in front of everybody's face. Hamadil ben Kodesh Achol. Now as he's about to tilt the candle and extinguish it into the wine, this fellow comes running out of the crowd and he grabs the rabbi's hand and he says, I'm not letting go until you tell me where did everybody go last week and where do you people go? The rabbi says, well, I have to dip the candle. He says, no, you don't. He says, he's got his hand firm. I'm not letting go until you give me the answer to that question. He goes, okay. Under duress, the rabbi says, I'll tell you. He says, this island has been here for the last hundreds and hundreds of years, you should know. And we are a port city outside of Eretz Israel. And one of the things that we live for, we delight most in over the course of these many, many centuries, is that we send guests 3 times a year to Eretz Israel to go to visit during the time of the Yom Tov, the Shlosh Regalim, the Be'olah Regel for us. And they would bring loaded with gifts. They would come back after the Yom Tov, after we celebrated privately, and they would fill us up with stories. Stories about what it looked like at the Beis HaMikdash, what was the temple, and the constant miracles, and all the things that were happening over there. And our ears would fill up, and our hearts would become brimming with emunah. And we would share these stories with our children. They would come tell them to the children in the school. We would share them at the Shabbos table until the next Yom Tov. And the great honor of 3 new people was sent off, and they would come back after having seen it themselves. And everybody longed that when is going to be my turn? When is it going to be my turn? And if you're from the Chashuvim, so you got a chance to go and you saw it for yourself and you had a chance to share stories with other people. And that's how we lived over here for hundreds and hundreds of years. He says what happened was, one year we sent off our messengers and we celebrated privately the Yom Tov back at home and we waited for the messengers to return. And we sat over there and we waited, and finally when the day came when we're anticipating for them to come back, we're at the beach with the band and everything to strike up. And the whole day went by and they didn't come. And right at the end of the day, when the sun was setting, we saw, there's the boat. And we started all singing and the band was playing. But then we noticed that as the boat moved closer, there wasn't 3 people, there was only 1 person. His head was held very low. And we started becoming curious, like, how come it's only 1 fellow? Where's the other 2? Why is he such a long face? Why is he so sad? We brought the boat and the fellow into the shore and we planted him in front of the whole community, and we said, they started riddling with questions. What's the long face? Where's the other 2? How come you're late? We can understand. Maybe the sea is not so predictable. Travel, we understand. But why the long face? What's the matter? And he grew very serious, and we all grew very serious to hear what he had to say. We got very, very quiet. Very, very quiet. He says, and everybody leaned in to hear what he had to say, and he started to speak in a whispered tone. He said, the Beis HaMikdash. And we said, good. We want to hear about the Beis HaMikdash. And they got quiet again. He said, the Beis HaMikdash. And the rabbi said, he spoke unspeakable words. He said the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. And when he said that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, he says the whole community, we started sighing and heaving and sobbing uncontrollably. It went like a knife into our hearts simultaneously. He says, Ad Kedei Kach, until he says we all died, Misa Achas, we died one simultaneous death. Our neshamas leapt out of our bodies. And we found ourselves in the next world. In the next world, there was a big confusion what to do with us, because here we had people that had not completed their mission here in life. And yet, once we had a peek on the other side, so how can they let us back into this world to look at this world with human eyes after we were already on the other side? What to do with us? So a compromise was arrived at, the rabbi told him. And it was decided that because we passed on because of our love and our longing for the Beis HaMikdash, we're going to spend the rest of our years, we're going to live out the rest of our lives, but only on Shabbos Kodesh. He says, now you know where we are during the rest of the week. I think the rabbi told him, he says, if you click your heels together 3 times and say there's no place like home, you'll find yourself back home with a throbbing headache and a memory that you spent a few Shabbos with people who are living out their lives only on Shabbos. So what's the connection over here? People who are longing for the Beis HaMikdash, people who end up loving Shabbos. Why does that work that way? So you don't have to be a big Talmud Chacham to know that everything that we do on Shabbos Kodesh, everything that we don't do on Shabbos, are the things that the 39 malachot, the 39 activities that went into the building of the Mishkan. And those 39 things, when it came time for Shabbos, suddenly we stopped them. Because Hashem says, you're building my place, stop my place, and I want you to observe my time. I want you to take care of my time. And those are the 39 things that we don't do on Shabbos. It has to do with Hashem's Zman, Hashem's time. Also, we know that eventually the Beis HaMikdash settled in a place that was called Hashem Yireh. That's where the Beis HaMikdash was. That's where Avraham Avinu went for Yitzchak. Hashem Yireh, Hashem will appear, and 3 times a year, all of Klal Yisrael was Ola Regel. We went up there to see Hashem or to be seen by Hashem. Okay, it's a dispute how it really was, but maybe both. Tarte mashma, that we went to be seen by Hashem and to see Hashem. People went there and they saw Kadosh Baruch Hu. Anybody who had any doubts or cracks in his emunah, in his mind, suddenly those cracks were sealed and they saw Kadosh Baruch Hu clearly. The Enei Ha'am, the eyes of the nation, the Sanhedrin sat over there also. That's where their office was, and that's where they held court. Because that was the place that appealed to the sense of vision. Anybody who wanted to see a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because what was the Beis HaMikdash? It was a continuation of Matan Torah. And Matan Torah, it says, Ha'am ro'im es hakolos, the whole nation, they saw what could be heard. They saw the kolos. And therefore, anybody who wanted to see what could normally be heard, Shema Yisrael, but we could see Shema Yisrael, we could see Hashem Echad, that was the place. Like we say that about the sandwich that we eat on Pesach, we say Zeicher LeMikdash Gehillel. That this sandwich is a remembrance of the Beis HaMikdash. It has a matzah on the outside, and it has the Korban Pesach on the inside. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It's to show, to see, and to demonstrate that Hashem is one. And Shabbos, we can say, is comparable to all the other 4 senses. Now, just to explain, I remember one year, my wife and I, one summer, we went to Eretz Yisrael. And while we were in Eretz Yisrael, so we went to visit, there was an elderly blind woman that my wife used to read letters for when she was in seminary. This woman knitted the most beautiful ornate sweaters. She had never saw light in a day in her life. Her and her husband, both blind from birth, two Moroccans, they raised 3-sighted children in the city of Yerushalayim. And my wife and I went to go visit with our 3 children, and my wife warned them beforehand, the kids, be careful, it's a little bit different, a little bit weird, don't get scared, someone doesn't look directly at you, she can't see. So we went up to her apartment. I remember it wasn't Shabbat, because she reached on the wall and she flicked on a light for us. I never forget that. She didn't need light, but she put on light for us. She felt on the wall and put on the light for us. And then we sat down there and she goes, oh, mizeh, oh, ze balech, this is your husband, oh. Without touching, without seeing, she understood, she understood how many kids we had in the room, and she was able to give a clear reading of each of the children, like you hope the Rebbe would be able to give in that little box that goes in comments on the report card. She gave such a clear, positive reading of every child's tenuas and nefesh, it was unbelievable. My wife and I were exchanging glances, she hit it, she nailed it each time, like, wow, how did she know that? She didn't even feel them, she didn't touch them, she just knew that who was in the room, she read the room. And then afterwards, when we left, we went back down to street level. My little 4-year-old at that time, he looked up at me, Eli, and he said, Ima, Abba. He says, that woman, she can't see with her eyes. He says, but she can see with her heart. That's what he noticed. She can see with her heart. So now we can understand something. We say in the Piyut, he said, Ohavi Hashem, people loving Hashem. Hamachakim bebinyan Ariel, who are hoping for the Beis HaMikdash, right? Because if you're loving Hashem, that means love means you want to. Rabbi Haimov talking about it means wanting to close the gap, wanting to be so close that there should be no distance, should be nothing interfering between the love. If it's a mile, if it's space, that's a distance. If it's a problem, that's a distance. We want to remove all the impediments. We should be that close to be echad, to be one with. So Ahavi Hashem, Hamachakim bebinyan Ariel, are hoping for the Beis HaMikdash because they want that clarity. We want to see Hashem. We want to perceive Hashem with our eyes. We want to be so clear. It wants to be so real to us. But we're stricken blind. We have no Beis HaMikdash. We can't see. And what does a person do if they can't see, but they still want to participate in reality? Sometimes a person can't see, and they give up, and they go under the covers, and they disappear from life, and they get depressed. Or sometimes a person can't see, and they said, I still want to participate in life, like the courage of this woman. And somehow the other senses are able to come to the fore, and the person can compensate, and the other senses compensate and even overcompensate to the extent that the person can apprehend reality and they can picture everything that's going on. And therefore on Shabbos we have an extra flavor. Ohavi Hashem, Hamachakim bebinyan Ariel, and we don't have the vision to see a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore what? Sisu v'simchu b'yom Shabbos Kodesh. We have an extra pleasure on Shabbos. K'makabla matan nachliel, like somebody who received an eternal gift. So how can we relate to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? It's clear. We have Shabbos. What would it be like a world without Shabbos? What would it be like a world without Shabbos? Maybe some people don't even have to imagine. What would it be like once having attained that taste of Shabbos, when you step back and you make space in your life where there's no machines and there's no buzzers and there's no beepers and there's nothing's going off. except if you're a doctor, maybe. Okay? But even then, that's with restrictions and boundaries. And suddenly you have space for family, you have time for community, you have time for a Kodesh Baruch Hu in your life. You open up that little window over there, that's Zman of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Can you imagine it closed up? The animals are living 7 days a week. What is that life? That's a life without Hashem. That's what it is. And if it's a life without Hashem, it's a life without value. If it's a life without value, then there's no limit to how far and how deep a person can fall in their life. That's a frightening, frightening proposition. Can't even explain it, can't even understand how far a person can fall without. Remember, we used to go visit Jewish prisoners. And for the first couple of times, the new guy would come in, he'd be agitated. Rabbi, you got to get me out of here. Rabbi, you got to get me out of here. Rabbi, you got to get me out of here. And I would tell him, yeah, okay. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, fine. Okay, I hear. Yeah, I know it's not comfortable. I know it's not comfortable. That's not my job. Okay, I'm sorry. I know you want to get out of here. 3 weeks later, a month later, 2 months later, the same fella's walking around and he's got a couple of half-smoked cigarettes and he's got a couple of squares of a chocolate bar, and this becomes the economy. That's like now he has big stock in IBM and he has stock in, suddenly those become the, and he got to know the guy who has the keys to the kitchen so he can get an extra piece of kugel once in a while. It's who you know. It's not what you know around here. Suddenly he got used to this small, low economy and he adjusted himself. It's amazing the ability of the human mind to adjust itself. It can work for our good and it can work for our not good also. I remember one Erev Rosh Hashanah, I went to the mikveh and I wanted to beat the rush, so I got there very early, and there was an Englishman. I'll never forget the sound of his voice as he was going into the mikveh. The mikveh was mamish yad soletisbo. You know what I'm talking about? It was hot. It was like a hot cup of tea. And he was going in and he was saying, "Oh, the fires of Gehinnom, the fires of Gehinnom, the fires of Gehinnom," as he was edging his way into the water over there. I said, let me, extend the shower, situation over here. I don't want to get burnt. And then as we got closer and closer, then I said, okay, I got to get into it. Now I'm going in. I can't avoid it. I said, oh, it's hot. Then you edge your way in. Fine, you get used to it. Next thing you know, I see this fellow sitting over there in a steam bath. The steam is coming up all around him. His head is there like a beach ball. With a smile, a grimace on his face. It's the same fellow who was shouting, the fires of Gehinnom a moment ago. So I couldn't resist. I shouldered up next to him and I said, we get used to Gehinnom, don't we? Tisha BAv, can't help but feel when you wake up on Tisha BAv morning and you realize it's that same thud feeling that you get when you get off the plane coming back from Eretz Yisrael and suddenly you meet the baggage handler, here in the United States. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing over here? Why am I back here? And compared to the feeling that you have when you arrive in Eretz Yisrael and the first Israeli cab driver yells at you and you feel at home. You know what I'm saying? But you feel like, wow, I'm here, I'm back in a place. I feel such warmth and such comfort. This is my place, this is my makam. And over here we feel dislocation, but we get used to Gehinnom. And we adapt ourselves with all kinds of weird things. And therefore when we say there's no distance to how low a person can fall, I feel obligated to read something. It's an unbelievable thing. Wow. Time is just flying on us. But Baruch Hashem. This is the holy time of the day, by the way. Sometimes on Yom Kippur, you peek in. Someone peeks in. I remember one time the door opened up. We were in a hotel on Yom Kippur. And one of the waiters at the hotel, he opened up the door and he happened to see us. We're in the middle of Ne'ilah. And the guy looked like, oh my gosh, this is a base Meshuggah. This is a house for crazy people over here. Huh? And I remember, that look on his face of fright, like, oh my, that's what these people are doing here? Boom, and he closed the door, like, And I was thinking to myself afterwards, he's got it all wrong. The rest of the year, we're in a base Meshuggah. And this is the only sane and sober moment of the whole year. Really, that's what's going on. That's when it's clear to us after a full day of fasting. Suddenly the body gives away and we said, forget about it. It's not about food anymore. It's not about, I don't hear my stomach rumble anymore. I hear my neshama percolating inside. So in that spirit, we can read the words of the Nefesh HaChaim. And he says that, that's an unbelievable thing. He says, Zos Torah Sa'adam, this is the Torah of man. Kol Ish Yisrael. Al Yomer Belivo Chas V'Shalom. No person should say in his heart, Ki ma'ani, what am I? Uma koichi, and what is my power? Lepoil b'maisei hashvalim shum inyan ba'olam. What does it matter what I do? What if I litter? If I say a bad word? If I get into a fight with somebody? If I do something good? If I do something bad? What is my davening worth either? Doesn't matter. He says, this shouldn't say that. Amnan yavin v'yeda, the person should understand and he should know. V'yikva b'machshavas libo, and he should install into his heart. She'll call prate ma'asav, every detail of every action that he does, v'diburo, and every one of his speeches. U'machshavasav, and even those of his thoughts. Call eis v'rega, at each moment, at each thought. Lo is abidu, chas v'shalom, is not lost. Nothing is lost. Everything is a ray of eternity. U'maravu masav ma'od v'gadlu v'ramu. How great and lofty and awesome are the deeds of every Jew, everybody that's walking around. Shekol achas oila kafi sharsha, because everybody impacts the world according to the root where he's plugged in. Lepoil pu'ulaso gavehu maromim, in order to impact the world like the angels are going up on the Yaakov Avinu's ladder, and then it spreads. We're not just impacting horizontally the world, we're impacting vertically. We're doing something here, it goes up and it spreads over to put a protective umbrella over the whole world, who knows? He says, Ba'olam tzachselchos ha'oras elyonim, and it's affecting higher worlds in ways that we can't even imagine. And then he continues, he says, Be'emes ke'isha chacham yavin es zos la'amito, and when a person is going to understand this truly and install it into his heart and take it to heart, Yachil bekirbo bechil v'ra'ada, the person is going to begin to treble inside. Besumo alibo al ma'isa v'shir lo tovim chas v'shalom, the person is going to think about his thoughts or his actions that were not correct, chas v'shalom. Al heichin heima magian lakalka laharos bechet kal chas v'shalom, how every light sin that a person does is able to be destructive in this world. He says, Harbe Yosem and Masha Hichrib Nebuchadnezzar v'Titus, even more than the destruction that Titus and Nebuchadnezzar did. We can sit on Tisha BAv and we can beat up and we can say, oh, Titus and Nebuchadnezzar, Titus and Nebuchadnezzar, what they did to us, what they did to us. The Nefesh HaChaim goes on to explain, he says, what we did to us and what we were capable of doing is more than what they did. They only came in after the fact. Sometimes you set a little box on fire and you see a box and it becomes a cinder. And then someone comes along and touches it, it collapses. He says, that's what Titus and Nebuchadnezzar did. He says, and when a Jew allows a thought into his mind that's not pure and that's not clean, chas v'shalom, he says, then what happens is he's doing worse than what Titus did when he brought a Zona into the Kodesh Kedoshim, into the Holy of Holies. Because when Nadav and Avihu, we say it in the Piyutim this morning, went into the Holy of Holies, they were burned up. Because their actions mean something, and they're effective, and they're impactful in the world. And when Titus went in, so nothing happened. There was no fire, there was no Eish Zara that came down to eat him up, because he didn't do anything. Because he only came in after the fact. He came in like a janitor, only to sweep up what was already destroyed. So it shows us the impact and the power that every Jew has. And if a person allows himself to fall and allows his thoughts to fall, then there's no distance to how destructive and how painful that could be, not just for himself, but how painful and how difficult it can be for the whole world. The Chavos Levavos says something unbelievable. I just feel I got to share it. He says in the parsha in the perek that has to do with bitochen. He speaks about, the Torah doesn't talk too much about the next world. And he gives a number of different answers why. And one of the answers he says because a person gets olam hazeh. If he didn't say it, I wouldn't be able to say it myself. He's a Rishon, 1,000 years ago he writes. A person gets olam hazeh, gets this world in Yiddishkeit, for the good things that we do externally, for the external part of the mitzvah. Even putting on tefillin, even putting on tzitzis, lighting Shabbos candles, and Oneg Shabbos, and all these things. This is all olam hazeh. We get olam hazeh. It's a good life. It's a better life. He says we get olam haba only for chovos levavos, only for duties of the heart. That's what he says. Chovos levavos, next world is only for chovos levavos. There's no external mitzvah a person can do that's going to grant him olam haba. Imagine a husband comes home and he knows on Shavuos, he looks at his list, he says, oh, I got to get flowers for Shavuos. So he comes home and he's got this flowers for Shavuos or maybe for Shabbos or whatever, and he takes them and he throws them down on the table. Here's your flowers. He gave the flowers. See, I was maniach tefillin. Hashem, what do you want from me? Where's the relationship? That was only a heichi timsa. It was only an act to bring close, that the heart should have a chance to grow close also. And I bought you a diamond ring too. And he throws it across the room. Where's the love? There's no love over there. The chovos levavos is the heart that comes along. I remember one time we had, maybe some people heard of the Manchester Rav. Have you ever heard of the Manchester Rav? Rabbi Yehuda Zev Segal. A very holy Jew. I saw him a few times in Muncie. One time he came to daven in our base medrash in yeshiva. And I remember seeing him over there, and it was mincha on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 o'clock mincha. And everybody was finished davening. I remember I backed up, and all finished. And I'm sitting there watching for the next 10 minutes like it was Neil on Yom Kippur. He's clapping away and he's crying like an old bent lulav, and he's crying. He's crying. I remember standing to the guy next to me and I said, I wonder what he did so wrong. You know, that must have been a big one. You know, I didn't understand what I'm looking at. I didn't have the eyes to appreciate what was going on. And then Shabbos, a week later, we were at one of the Rebbeim's house and we were talking, and he says, you know that Reb Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadok Livracha, said that Reb Segel, that the Manchester Rav is one of the 36 hidden tzaddikim in the world. I said, wow. But my question, I always ask these questions in yeshiva, they used to get these looks that shout, you know? And remember the Rebbe looked at me, I looked at the Rebbe and I said, Rebbe, I said that he outed a CIA agent over here, you know? He just pointed out that he's one of the 36 hidden tzaddikim. So now we know who he is. He's not hidden anymore. I remember my Rebbe looked at me like what did I say so wrong? Isn't it a good question? He says, Rabbi Label, he says, you think you see him? You think you see him? You see his eyebrows? You see his beard? You see his back? You see his hands? You don't see him. That's the tip of the iceberg. He says, underneath, it's like an iceberg. There's a whole submerged continent of devotion. He puts on, let's say, the same tefillin that you put on. He picked up the same art scroll, Ashkenaz Siddur to daven mincha. And look at the interaction, look at the chemical reaction it had with his heart as compared to the reaction it had with our heart. His heart is devoted to a Kadosh Baruch Hu in a different way. So when a person is able to work up his heart to gain that type of devotion and to come close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's why we asked the question on Tisha BAv, a Kadosh Baruch Hu cries like a father. It's Chodesh Av. Av means it's a father. A father wants to know, not to punish, not to hurt, not to inflict pain. I remember when my father used to have to take things to me, he used to tell me, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. I never believed him, you know. Now that I'm a father, I understand it. But the Chodesh Av, the father's asking, he says, Eicha, Eicha, how did it happen? Which is the same letters as Ayeka. Where are you? Where are you? The Baal Shem Tov says where a person's thought is, that's where they are entirely. A person could be standing at the kosel and be looking at his iPod or his iPad, whatever it is, and he could be thinking about something, the most low and decrepit thing in the whole universe, and he might as well be like Titus with his head, with his zona. He might be in the worst possible place, because that's where he is entirely. And a person could be sitting in Queens on a bus or walking in the street, and his mind is busy with Divrei Torah, and he's thinking about, I love you, Hashem. Kirvus Elokim Li Tov. Ma'ashiv Hashem Kol Tagim Elohi Alai. How much I love you, Hashem. I wish I knew how to repay you, Hashem, for all the good that you gave me. And the person is right there. He's close to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Kirvus Elokim Li Tov. Where is the person's thoughts? Where are you, Ayeka? Where are you, Jewish people? How come we ask, oh, Ma'ashiv Hashem Kol Tagim Elohi Alai. My daughter hit me with such a line. I hurt my hand the other day, playing basketball, whatever. You know, my body didn't do what I thought my mind knew how to do when it would play basketball. So there's a lag time. I got hurt, sprained some fingers, and it swelled up like a balloon. And instead of complaining about it, I tried to hold it in, whatever. But my daughter says, can you imagine, Abba? She says someone fed her a line. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow only with those things that you thanked the Kadosh Baruch Hu for today. Imagine you woke up tomorrow only with those things that you thanked the Kadosh Baruch Hu for today. You begin to realize how kofar we are, how much denial we have in thanking the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What a big avoda, what a big job we have. And what a long list we can all write. I want to wake up tomorrow with, right? Let's start the list like that. And when you begin thinking like that, then suddenly a whole universe of possibility opens up in our minds. And therefore, Shlomo Melech, the wisest of all men, only told us, he says, Mikol Mishmar, therefore, from all the things that you watch, from all the things that you watch, and people watch their children, and they watch their health, and they watch their money, and they watch all kinds of different, they watch their house, they put a security system around, an alarm around their house, all kinds of different things. People watch their property. Some people even do Shemir Saloshin, that's very nice too. He says, Mikol Mishmar, from all the things that you watch, he says, Nitzor. And the Vilna Gaon says Nitzor is even a higher level of watching. You know, sometimes you just put a watch, you put a fence there, but it doesn't have a heavy lock on it. But this, you put a heavy, strong lock on it. Mikol Mishmar, from all things you watch, Nitzor Libcha, watch your heart. Heart doesn't mean heart in Tanakh, it means mind. Watch your mind. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu put the brain in this coconut up here, right? He didn't put it behind the thin rib cage, right? And he didn't put it, even the eyes have these, you know, it's protected, it's in a bony crevice, but the brain, no one touches the brain. Mikol Mishmar, from all the things you watch, Nitzor Libcha, watch your heart. Ki mimene totzas chayim, because from thoughts founds life. How a person thinks, where a person's thoughts are, that's who they are. That's the definition of the person. And that's Chovos Levavos. Chovos Levavos is not just feelings and longings for Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's putting our thoughts towards, and I want to be close to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That is my job. That's what we come from. That's what we should be thirsting for at the end of a Tisha BAv. That's what we should be hankering and hungering for, is the closeness. And the fact that we don't have a chance to say it, we're not allowed to say hello and shalom to another person. We're longing for Jewish human company. It's amazing how the Yetzer Hara works. The minute you can't have something, how much you want it. And how when we're allowed to say hello to each other, how much we ignore each other. To have an appetite. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Abstinence makes the heart grow fonder. The more we say, you can't talk to each other, go to your room, you have to go to your room, suddenly you want to play nicely with your brothers and sisters, you want to get along. And therefore, maybe just to tailor it down to the end over here, we're getting close to Mincha, at the end of the day. We know that learning Torah expands the consciousness of the Jew and expands the conscience of the Jew. Because there's something called a kol d'mamadaka, a little thin voice inside of us that feels when we did something right and feels an excitement inside. It's hard to describe it. Schar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. When you did something good, you feel good inside. That you fasted on Tisha BAv, that you came to a shir, that that you did the right thing, you gave tzedakah, or whatever it is that you did. When you did it, it might not have been easy to do, but when you're done with it, you feel good. We ask our kids every Friday night, what did you do this week? They gave you a feeling of accomplishment. It was always the thing that was the hardest thing for them to do that week, where they had to overcome something, where they had to overcome some kind of a limitation, even if it was a temporary limitation. The kid who didn't want to wash the milchik dishes, ended up on Friday night saying, what was the thing you felt the most accomplished by? They put up the biggest fight. I washed the milchik dishes this week, right? The thing that they didn't want to do, because they felt inside that was my accomplishment. That was the thing that I did. So schar mitzvah mitzvah, the reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah. And schar avera, avera. And the reward of the avera is the avera itself, the feeling, the thud that goes inside when a person knows that they took their value and their self-worth and their relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu and they burnt it like a $1,000 bill. They took a $1,000 bill and they burned it. We live in a world, Rahman al-Islam, where a person can lose it in 1 minute. And we have to say it. We have to say it. A person can lose it in 1 minute. It used to be, the person had to go sneak away and go do something. Now, it's in your hand. It's befichu levavcha lasosa, unfortunately in the negative way. People walking around with cell phones, people walking around with iPads and iPhones. I'm not saying hide and tuck yourself away from the technology. But when a person looks at things that are forbidden and looks at things and he gets drawn into them, then it's mamayit and it shrinks the conscience. And the person feels bad about themselves. It's not a good feeling. It's not a happy feeling. For one moment of joy or pleasure or excitement, and then the mind gets addicted to it. It has a way of pulling the person in. It's terrible. People are getting lost. They're getting lost in one moment. And therefore, what's the difference between a crazy person and a normal person? Let's get this definition spelled out of here. A normal person, crazy person. We hear in the last couple of weeks, we hear that a guy walks in, he does the most outrageous, it's unspeakable. Like, you look at him, a sugar with red hair. What happened to this guy? What happened to him? And the answer is, there's no difference between his layers of reality. What's the difference between a crazy person and everybody else? Right? A crazy person, he doesn't have any filter between what he thinks and what he speaks and what he does. Yeah? Because a lot of us think thoughts. I remember I went to see Rabbi Victor Miller one time. And I asked him about a certain question about someone who had a certain natiya in this direction. I'm not even going to spell it out. Someone told me that they had a young child who they had diagnosed with a gender issue at the age of 3. And he said, nonsense. He says, we all have different seeds of thoughts in our minds. Sometimes even crazy thoughts, outrageous thoughts. He said to me, did you ever walk up to the top of a building? Did you ever sit on the top of a building and think of throwing yourself down? He says, but you didn't, did you? And he smiled and he walked away. People have crazy thoughts, but we don't act, we don't speak about them, we don't act on them. And if somebody happens to say something, then he doesn't even bring it into action, because there's a filter between machshava, and there's a machshava de machshava, there's a dibor de machshava, and there's a maisa de machshava. You understand what I'm saying? There's a thought of thought, a ball gets thrown onto the field, and you don't have to pay attention to it. The person starts to play with it, now he develops it into a picture in his mind. You didn't have to develop it into a picture if you happen to see something flitted across your mind. And then you didn't have to make it your screensaver permanently, that's a maisa de machshava. The action of thought. And then in the world of speech, there's the machshava, the dibor, where you're just saying nice things and just in a flippant way. And then there's the dibor, there's the speech of speech, and then there's the maisa of speech of dibor. And then there's the maisa of maisa. So it goes all the way down. And once those filters are broken, then what happens is, that's a crazy person. That's called shvir sakelim. The person is not in touch with reality, he lost his filters. And therefore, when we have these things that are being thrown at us and being sent to us and sent our way, then let's say, okay, I need it for work, and I need it, but put a filter on it. Put a filter on it. Put a filter in your brain. Put a filter on a computer. I talked to Beis Yaakov's girls this year. A whole convention that learned in America. I told them, people usually ask you for shidduchim, do they put a white tablecloth on, or do they not put a white cloth? Do they scrape the plates? Does the mother wear a tichel at the Shabbos table, or does the mother wear her robe? And we have to know if the family's shtim, if they match. Find out if the boy has a computer. Find out if he has if he has a cell phone that has internet access, and find out if he has a filter on that computer. Find out if the father has a filter on the computer. I learned with a fella on Tuesday afternoons, partners in Torah, and this fella tells me he's a secular guy. He's a top business guy. He tells me he doesn't know one male adult who doesn't indulge himself for hours each week. And I can't even say what it is. I'm not even going to say the word. He doesn't know one male adult who does not. Right? They're not going to shul. They're not learning Gemara. They're not learning Mesilas Yesharim. They're not keeping the Shabbos holy. And they're not acting and not pretending to act and not expected to act as the Am Hashem. But Hashem is looking down and saying, where is my people? Mishacharav Beis HaMikdash. Ein lo l'Kodesh Baruch Hu ela daled amos shel halacha. 4 cubits of halacha. That's all the Kodesh Baruch Hu has in the world since the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. And now this insidious thing comes in. Put a filter. There's a dog, there's a canine filter. It's for free. It turned my computer from Times Square to New Square. And I thank God every day. Person wants to live in a Hefkerwelt, wants to live in a wild world. You might as well make a donation to the Nazi party. There, I said it. Why? Protect yourself. Protect your family. Ayeka, where are you? Where are we? Bachurim learning in yeshiva all day long, suddenly get access to this, and they're ruined. It's hard. It's easy to lose innocence. It's hard to get it back. Families ruined. Good children ruined. Ruined. Because it's hard to stare at the Tosfos. It's hard to look. It's hard to think. It's hard to put the Yagiyah, Yati Matzati. If you worked, then you get. If you didn't work, you didn't get. If you can have this and instant that. And no one's going to say at the Shabbos table, oh, I'm glad I had access to this. I'm glad I was able to push a button and see this. Nobody would ever say it in an honest moment. So why let it into our lives completely? Let's fight. Let's push back. This is a milchama of Hanukkah. We have to push back for the purity, for the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. We have to regain Kedusha. Parents are investing thousands and thousands of dollars in the Torah education. And when the kids come to school, they check for the nits. I don't want my kids to go to a school where they might have nits. Forget about nits. Kid comes with an iPhone to school. It's a chorban. He comes with a loaded gun. We have to be so careful. Always going over to play at Shlomi's house, at this house. Who's there? What do they have over there? Why is he so eager to go over there? What are they looking at? What are they doing? Mikol Mishmar, from all the things you watch. Nitzur Libcha, watch your children's minds too. Watch your own mind. Get a flavor for Kedusha. Again. Get a taste for holiness. Ohavi Hashem, hamachakim b'binyan Ariel. Sisu v'simchu b'yom Shabbos Kodesh, k'makablim matanach liel. Just to finish up, Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Nachman said an unbelievable thing. Listen to this. He says, Le'inyan his chazkut. If it wouldn't be a song, maybe I wouldn't know it. Lebal yipul adam badaito, a person shouldn't get down, chas v'shalom. Machmas riboy hapagamim v'kilkolim, because of all the different mistakes that he made and destructions. Shel kilkol ayidei masav, that came about through his actions. Don't give up. Anava Amar, answer the following. Imatam amin, if you believe. Sheyacholin lekakel, that you have the ability to destroy something. Tamin sheyacholin lesakein, you have to believe you have the ability to make it right and to fix it up. For Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us the buttons to destroy, He gave us the buttons, the tshuva buttons, in order to set it right. We'll finish up with this brief story. There was a fella, he lived in Eretz Yisrael. He became a Baal Tshuva. He was very proud, he was learning. And he was living married with a beautiful family, young family. But he had a secret. And the secret was tattooed right on his arm, on his right arm. It was an ugly, ugly, ugly tattoo. Didn't say mom, okay? Now let me just say it like that. I knew a couple of guys like this. But this guy didn't, he had an ugly tattoo. He didn't want anybody to see it. That would be like the worst thing that would reveal, even though he did tshuva and his heart changed, but he had this ugly reminder of his terrible past, of how low he had fallen. And so what he did was, he just kept his sleeves long. But then again, he wanted to go to the mikveh. Some people go every day, I go every day. Some people go once a week, Erev Shabbat. He also wanted to go Erev Shabbat, but that's too risky. But Erev Rosh Hashanah, everybody's going. He wanted to go Erev Rosh Hashanah to the mikveh. So he's thinking, how can I go? So he figured, I don't want to miss out. I want the extra kedusha. Habola Tahir Messiah. So you come to purify yourself, get a little help. So he strategized, he scouted out, and he realized there's a time when it's not so busy. There's a shower here, the pool is over there. I'll put the towel on my arm. It'll look a little awkward. I'll walk over there, I'll back up, and no one will be the wiser. Good. So when he got there, it was a little bit busier than he had expected. And a lot of noise, a lot of people hubbubbing around, and it made him a little bit nervous. There was some soap on the floor, and he started moving maybe quicker than he should have. I don't have to tell you, as he was hustling to the pool with the towel on his arm, all of a sudden, his feet went out from underneath him. Woo! He flew, the towel went flying up in the air. His hand reached out to break the fall. He had to let go of the towel that was covering the tattoo on his arm. And suddenly the room went silent. And there was his tattoo for everybody to see. And in that deep silence, he understood that his secret was out, and there was no way to put it back in the bottle. And he could imagine the pain of embarrassment that he was suffering, in the depth of the pain, that the one thing he didn't want anybody else to know about now was known by so many people. It was too late. And he just sat there on the floor. He didn't try to cover up. He didn't try to do anything about it. It was it. It was over. It was too late. And everybody felt his terrible embarrassment. There was nothing to do. No one could say anything to him. Oh, don't worry about it. It was too much for anybody to speak. And along comes an elderly man. And again, I see these fellows once in a while in the mikveh. There's not too many. There's fewer and fewer, with the numbers on his arms from Auschwitz. And he comes lumbering along, and he picks this fella up off the floor. And he points to the numbers that he has on his arm, and he says, this was my Gehenna. He points to the tattoo on his arm, and he says, probably that was your Gehenna. He says, let's go into the mikveh together. One generation's pain can maybe help the other generation. You understand? That's our Gehenna. This is our Gehenna. That we have images that got tattooed into our brain, that got tattooed into our hearts. These salmim, these impressions, and we have to get them out. And along comes Tisha BAv, Baruch Hashem. We have to face this brutal truth and understand that this is what we had to go through. This is the tattoos that we have. And therefore we say, in the tears of Tisha BAv, let's make a mikveh, and let us go into that mikveh together. I want to give a shout out for the fellows of Torah Anytime, and also for Chazak, for the great and wonderful work they do. Chazak, v'nis chazek, strength, more strength, and we should all be strengthened. And of course the fellas at Torah Anytime that make Torah available to everybody all over the world. I can't tell you how many times I bump into people from all kinds of odd places, and they tell me they watch, they see, not only the things that I'm doing, but things that other people are doing. Sometimes I gave a shir to one or two people that was always in the room, but Torah Anytime was there, and they made sure that more and more, and hundreds of people and thousands of people saw it, so it got spread all over the world. So we should give them our support and give them our help. You have a question from the audience over there? Yeah?
Do you have a skill that we could use to control our thoughts, and are we punished for bad thoughts?
So the skill is Barasi Yetzahara or Barasi Lo Torah Tavlin. Get interested in Torah. Get interested in Torah to the greatest, because that's really what the neshama is thirsting for and clamoring for. Get interested in Torah, and that's going to help us not to control our thoughts in a forceful way, but in a delightful way. Okay.